I up already? Boy, I was just thinking, it didn't look like that we needed anything else. It was so good. And I love it when we have like percussion and a bass. That is so, the whole thing put together is just the maximum amount of energy for me. I mean, it just changes how I experience church. So thank you. Thank you. All of you who participate in it, thank you. And Pat, thank you for your meditation. It seems like everything from the very moment I woke up this morning, it's just sort of being like this. It's just picking me up. And the subject is the art of relationships. Do you know I just love talking about things I don't have any clue about? It's my favorite thing. They are difficult. I remember this, now you wouldn't think that I would remember this, but something I read in, I think it was the Time magazine in 1957. I was in East Tennessee, the minister of a church, and I was reading about that in South Dakota there was a liars contest. But the guy who won it with just one sentence. He said, there was a man who knew all about women. And hands down, he was the winner. And that was all he needed to say. I've had so much feelings about what it takes to really do relationships. And I realize that, you know, it's not just about like man and wife or man and or partners or whatever. That it's just like nations. I know that I can remember back, it's the only time that I ever had a bomb shelter, and I bought the house from somebody who was selling them. That was the only reason they had one there. But in 1962, I was living in this house, but do you know, when I heard about all this stuff, you know, that was going on, and John Kennedy and Khrushchev all matched up and everything, I didn't even bother to stock it. I thought, well, you know, if they're going to do away with everybody else, I might as well go with them. I didn't want to be by. But I remember another little thing from that, and I heard this as a true story, so, you know, I can't confirm it, but it was from the meeting that the diplomats were having over this very thing, this very problem in October of 1962. But there was all of this really heated discussion going on, and finally there was a Russian diplomat who said, do you mind if I tell a little joke? Since there was just a quiet and hush, they'd all given up. And they said, well, go ahead, you know. And he told the little story. He said, does anyone here know the difference between communism and capitalism? And they didn't answer. So he said, in communism, it's man exploiting man. But in capitalism, it's the other way around. You know, I always come up here and I tell you that it's never really that important to me if you absorb my way of thinking, you know, because I'm going to go on the way I'm thinking, and it alters along maybe a little bit, and hopefully in a way that has improved the way I see life and the way I experience life. But one of the things I've always believed is that the actual truth of us is that whatever is happening is self-engendered. Whatever's happening in our life. Now, sometimes that's really hard to absorb. I'm really all right with that until somebody's in my face, and then it's more difficult. You know, does that make sense? I mean, you can say, I love the world, I love humankind and everything, but when someone's in your face, it's harder. And I think it probably was so appropriate because This is Sunday before last. Remember when Jeannie was here? Well, I wanted to take Jeannie to dinner at a place downtown over off 7th Street, the Mediterranean Grill. But I didn't realize she had an entourage of 6 more people. But anyway, I decided might as well just take them all. But when I got there, I was a little delayed, and something went wrong with a little thing in the parking garage that comes up, And so I'm out there. Everybody else, I let Pat and Jeannie out, and the other people were already there, and they're all in there waiting on me. So anyway, finally they sent a mechanic out who fixed the thing, and this is after, I don't know how long it wasn't. It seemed longer probably than it was. But anyway, finally it went up. And then when I got in, there wasn't a parking space. So I saw a place that I think was designated for smaller cars, so I pulled in there. Now, there was already a pickup that was a little over the line, but I left it, even with my tummy, I had to pull it in, but I was able to get out okay. But when we got through eating, and we stayed in there a long time, I can't imagine anybody waiting for me this long to chew me out. But the person in the car that was parked that I sort of squeezed in beside, and they had plenty of room on the other side. It was so easy to get out. But apparently, it was very important to them to tell me everything that they could possibly. And it went on and on and on. I mean, it was, and I explained to them, I said, well, I couldn't find a parking place. And they said, well, this isn't a parking place. And, and they were chewing Pat out too. And she had nothing, she didn't even know about it. But anyway, the point was that it's amazing that it was so important that they waited, no telling how long, just so they could tell me. And I finally said, I said, well, if you don't want to pull out, I said, let me go ahead. I said, it's not a problem. I'll pull out and everything. And the last thing as we started to leave, Pat said to them, we bless you, we love you, and we see the Christ in you. You should have seen their faces. I mean, it was like when we pulled out, their mouths were still open. But anyway, get back to my message about relationships. They're hard. And that was a particularly hard thing for me. And I admitted, I said, well, it was pretty dumb pulling in there, but I said there wasn't any other place. I didn't tell them that there was 6 people inside waiting on me and had been waiting quite a while. But anyway, it all worked out. But I thought about it a great deal because the attitude I have is that spirit, there is no real person there. It's all of that moment was just between myself and spirituality. That's all it was. It was like a pop quiz. Remember those in college? A pop quiz when you're not expecting it and it's a little tough. But that's how I felt about it. Okay. When I'm saying that there's nobody there but myself and spirit, I've been saying that for nearly 30 years. But experiencing it and feeling like it's the truth for me at that moment was a little difficult. So we've got this thing of spirituality involved in relationships, and yet we're in this body and we've always got this human experience. And so I guess it's really okay that we have an emotion. I mean, I can't say that this made me angry. 30 years ago, I would have hated to get in that situation because of temper. And which, like I said, I've worked hard to not be a part of that anymore. Not always, but, this has been very important to me to find a way to those things that I believe in to experience them that way. Do you see? It's nothing just to have a theory. You've got to have the experience. That's what means something. And it's just like in relationships. I don't want to know about a good marriage. I want to experience one. That's the difference in it. Okay. But here's the words of Deepak Chopra, which I read quite a bit. And if I have appeared to be a little dizzy today, I've been reading Stephen Hawking's books, A Brief history of time. Anyway, that's my current reading. Relationships. Now, this is Deepak. Relationships are driven forward with words. If you listen to yourself, you will know how you are relating to the universe right now. Don't be thrown off by the fact that there is another person in front of you. Whoever you are talking to, including yourself, when you're talking to yourself, stand in for reality itself. In other words, this person is standing in, and it's really the universe, in other words, that you're talking to. Now let me continue on. If you are complaining about a lazy waiter in a restaurant, you are really complaining about spirit. Can you buy that? Okay. If you are showing off to someone you want to impress, you are really trying to impress the universe. There is only one relationship. Now that's hard to see, isn't it? It may be the fact, if you remember in the scripture, the Apostle Paul wrote concerning our relationship in our body-soul relationship. He said, here is a treasure in an earthen vessel. A treasure. So that means part of you is this earthen vessel, but the real you is this treasure. So what does that mean about the other people that you meet or experience in life? The treasure is who you're really dealing with. It's not the earthen vessel. So whatever that earthen vessel is experienced doesn't have to really become a part of our life, although it usually does. But what we do is that if we know this fact, we begin to get better and better and better as we go along at handling whatever the thing is, you know. And I felt like accidentally probably that I handled all of that pretty well, and that I was glad, though, that there wasn't the carry the gun, you know, the carry what law that's coming out. I was really glad because he was mad enough to shoot me, I believe. We're going to go there again probably today. I want to see if they're still standing there. Okay. Here's a question. Here's a question as you're dealing with people that I want you to try to wrap your thoughts around. Now ask yourself, is your presence one that reflects a kind, loving God or a shaming, blaming God? Now see the difference? In other words, when we're present, what really are we reflecting? I wanted to talk a little bit about marriage, but in my introduction, I've used up all my time, so I got to be brief here. Okay. But marriage and partners, it so helps when we do see ourselves and others as this treasure that I'm talking about. In other words, it's like when we get into a relationship, it is so important that the focus of our attention is on the very best qualities that person has. Because they may just have one or two little minor faults, but if we get to focusing on those things, they seem to multiply and get so big, become monsters in our life. But if we focus on the beauty that is there in every human being, in everybody, it's there. I don't care. I have to tell about your friend Christina. And she was selling real estate, and there's a whole group of people in the car, and they're going along, and somebody was being critical of someone, and Christina sort of corrected him and said, no, that's really a lovely person you're talking about. And somebody then said, well, Christina would see the best in everybody. Said she would have seen the best in Hitler. And Christina said, I would not have. But then she thought and she said, but he was very thorough. what we strive for in relationships is to become a unified force. When there's conflict with each other, this does something to the energy. The very best that could come of it is just hearing yourself and then correcting it. Do you see? But if we can become, as partners, a unified force, this makes everything work so much better. We begin to communicate. I think this is one of the really difficult things in relationships, is sometimes it's so hard to communicate and to really express how we feel about something, because there's times when I sort of thought my feelings were hurt, and then when I tried to explain it, it sounded so foolish that I was embarrassed that I even brought it up. Have you ever been in a situation like that where your feelings were hurt and then you became embarrassed about it? I think all of us somehow have had that experience. But the idea being is that in relationships, when we begin to communicate, I think it's okay to tell the story even if we're wrong. Even if we're wrong, because I think it helps reflect. And then it helps the other person to understand exactly what they said and how they said it and how it affected you. Now, I don't think that we need to be too careful in life when we're talking to people, especially after we've been with someone for 33 years like I have, but we are, because here's the idea behind all that we're saying, all that we're dealing with. Remember, the thing that I read from Deepak Chopra and the thing that I believe with all my heart is that we're really not dealing with that person. We're dealing actually spirit, which is, their spirit is part of the universe. So I'm trying to make that clear, because when I talk about invisible things, it makes it difficult to wrap our minds around it. But since I've got a group of well-versed in unity and New Thought principles, it makes it easier so I can really say these things. But here is a point that is so important, that as we communicate, we use these words that we're to uplift, to validate, to do things that encourage that person, because this is the key to growth. Putting people down and criticizing them, this is not what helps a relationship. If anything, it deteriorates because of that. There's something about it in the spiritual realm that, and people that just see themselves as a body, thinks that's the way to get things straightened out. But it really isn't. It really isn't. We see ourselves as spiritual beings, not just this body, but spiritual beings, and then we know that our whole purpose is uplifting and doing things and saying things and doing it in a way that this person feels better about themselves. They'll grow a lot faster, better. Everything will be better the better they feel about themselves. And remember, you're talking to the universe as well as to the person in the physical. How it works, I'm not sure I can tell you, but I do know that that is the truth. And that is the answer to so many relationships. Now, I wanted to say a little bit about kids, and that there's not too many of us here that have newborns. Yeah, somebody does over here, because I heard them. 2 of them. Is that right? Over there. Well, Rebecca's helping me. I would talk on my own about children, but there was a time that I thought that I was probably the best parent that ever lived. Until my children grew up and explained to me how terrible I really was. Well, then stepchildren came along, and I think I learned my lesson, because I tried to be just like, accept them like they were, and not tried, I really didn't give much advice. I thought, well, I was still sort of in shock from learning from my children, but I really didn't know anything about it. But one of the things that I wanted to bring to you is this. There is a reading. and then I'll go on from there because this says everything that I would like to say. It's from the prophet Gibran. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life longing for itself. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts. They have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. I always thought that said everything I wanted to know about bringing up children, which, like I said, I don't intend to do it anymore, but I've certainly had some experience. And then let's think about the church and our relation as a group. There's always someone. You cannot have a church without having at least two critics. I mean, there's some rule of the universe that you've got to have that. I mean,
you know what? There has to be two.
There you go. There you go. There has to be two at least. I mean, that's, you know.
One has to have another one to complain to.
There you go. That's a very good point. That's really a very good point. Okay. But what we're coming here for then is to affirm the experience that we wish to have. We're coming affirming this experience. Now, there's some way or other that this thing of the experience and there's no way to separate everything out. You have to remember, as you walk in the door, that you are the church. You are the church. Now, I have a suggestion. And it's not an easy thing, but I mean, it is an important thing. Before you come to church, take time. It would be wonderful if you could take an hour to just meditate. And before your meditation starts, think about the music. Think about the speaker. Whoever's involved in the service, all of the people that are involved in making it happen. Think about all of this and sort of let that run through your mind, and then sit and just meditate on spirit for about an hour. I want to tell you, it'll make such a difference. You'll walk in that door, and I don't care. Somebody can just say hello, and it sounds like an angel. I don't know how it works. A lot of these things I can talk about because I feel like that I've learned how to experience them. When I come to this church, if I seem overwhelmed with everything you do, it's a reality for me. It's a reality. Seeing y'all up there, you can't imagine. I'm sitting back here, and it's just a force that you've created because of the energy, the movement. I mean, when I look up here and I see Daniel and Terry down here, and they're both, man, that just picked me way up. But everybody, I use them as examples, but really everybody, I could just feel the energy pouring out. But this is what we're supposed to get. But what we do, we bring what we want with us. Now that's hard to say. You think you come to church to receive. Hey, you come to church to give and to receive, and you're bringing in all of this energy that you want to experience. And it won't miss. If you've really spent the time really digging into it spiritually, you've spent time meditating, praying about it, really working with the idea, I want to tell you, you can't miss. You can't miss. I mean, it'll just blow you away just being here in this building. It does. It never fails me that I come into this building, and I mean, I feel healthier when I go out. I feel more love. Here's an idea. We're bringing attitude and energy every time we show up here, aren't we? That's what we're doing. And Pat thought of this. shared this thought with me this morning when we were sitting in our meditation room. Your presence should be so comfortable that a person should be able to just sink into your love. Thank you.